All right, welcome to the Ironwood Gym. This is a belt. Okay. One of the more common questions that I've received kind of throughout the years, and I still continue to receive this question today, is should I wear a belt? I honestly have no idea. That is a highly individual thing. It depends on a number of different factors. And for me, just to blindly answer that question, yes, you should wear a belt. Or no, don't wear a belt. I don't think that would be appropriate. So it involves digging a little bit deeper and understanding the context or the situation that individual person is in, and finding out why they want to wear a belt, why they think they need to wear a belt, what they want to get out of a belt, and also what is the nature of how they lift. Are they lifting competitively? Are they just an average gym goer that's just trying to stay in shape? Are they an athlete that's pushing a little bit beyond their limits a little bit? So that's where I want to go first with that person when they ask me that question, is why do you want to wear a belt? And so I'm going to cover, starting out this video, this isn't going to be a complete how to wear a belt Bible. Okay, I'm going to get into a little bit of how to use the belt, how to wear a belt, a little bit with different types of belts. Just want to focus a little bit more and dig into why or why not someone should be wearing a belt. So I'm going to go over first, starting out, I want to go over 3 different groups, and do they have a necessity or do they not have a necessity to wear a belt? So the first group is the athletes, soccer players, baseball players, football players, track and field athletes, tennis players, whatever your sport, your chosen sport that you are thinking about. Do you need to wear a belt when you're in the weight room doing your lifting portion of your training? In my years as a coach, I never recommended for someone to wear a belt. I also never recommended them to not wear a belt. So if they came and asked me, should I wear a belt? We would discuss maybe why they need to wear a belt, why they think that would be better for them. And then I kind of let them make the decision. If they wanted to wear a belt, I never once said you shouldn't wear a belt. And there are coaches out there that believe that. But that's not real. It's not hurting an athlete to wear a belt. And the common mindset, not the common mindset, but a mindset that is out there, is that if you're an athlete, you don't get to wear a belt when you're out on the tennis court playing tennis, or on the soccer field, or on the football field, or the baseball field, the basketball court, whatever case may be. You're not wearing a belt when you're doing your sport. Yes, that is true, but it really has no relevance to whether someone wears a belt or not in the weight room. Okay? Remember, the weight room is GPP for the athlete. If they wear a belt, it's okay. Okay? We should be training their abs in an effective manner anyway. We should be training their low back in an effective manner anyway. If they wear a belt when they squat, it's not going to be the end of the world. It could actually help, okay, because one of the arguments is if they're not going to be wearing a belt in their sport, they're going to have to utilize their abs, their low back, and their obliques to support their body, and they need to learn how to do that without the belt. Well, the belt, because the belt essentially is taking over for those muscle groups. Well, that's not really true if you know how to use the belt appropriately. If you know how to create intra-abdominal pressure, push your abs and brace out against the belt. Okay, then the belt is actually helping you recruit your abs and your obliques and your low back to a higher degree than if you didn't have a belt on. So that argument that you shouldn't wear a belt because you want to learn to utilize those muscles without the belt really doesn't, kind of falls flat on its face. It doesn't hold up because the belt can actually help you learn to utilize those muscle groups more effectively. If you can teach that athlete how to do that. And it's really not that hard to do. So if an athlete wants to wear a belt, if it makes them feel more secure, if it makes them feel more stable, especially if they're handling a lot of weight on a frequent basis, if they are, then those are all decent reasons to wear a belt. If you have a female tennis player that only squats around 100 pounds, then there's really not a big necessity. That's not really going to offer her anything other than maybe teaching her how to start recruiting those muscle groups. But other than that, it's really not going to offer anything that's going to give her any sort of advantage when she's squatting, when she's deadlifting, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so let's move on to the second group, and that's going to be your lifters, your competitive lifters, or your very serious, hardcore people going to the gym and working out that have goals of reaching maximum strength levels. So your power lifters should probably definitely wear a belt. Do they always need to wear a belt? No. In a lot of my training, I do not wear a belt. Generally, and this is just kind of a random rule for myself that I came up with, once I hit 225 in the squat, I'm probably going to put a belt on. That's if I'm squatting with my powerlifting style. If I'm squatting more of an Olympic-based style, where I'm sitting more down, letting my knees come forward, at that point, I don't wear a belt no matter what weight I have on the bar. For deadlift, it just depends. Sometimes it's 275, sometimes it's 315 before I put the belt on. Just kind of depends on how I feel on that day. Again, there's nothing set here. A lot of my warm-up sets prior to those weights that I listed will all be done without the belt. And I don't wear a belt for anything other than squat variations and deadlift variations. When I get to my good mornings, my RDLs, any sort of assistance type exercise, I'm not going to wear a belt no matter how heavy I'm going. So if I'm doing shrugs with 400 or 500 pounds, I'm not going to be wearing a belt. If I'm doing RDLs with 300, 400 pounds, I'm not going to be wearing a belt. But especially once you start getting into competition or getting near competition, I think for a power lifter, it would be to their advantage to have a belt on. Again, knowing how to use it properly, knowing how to brace your abs and push out against the belt so they're getting the most out of it, could add an additional weight to the bar. It's not going to be an earth-shattering weight, but it does help them handle a little bit more weight. Also, with that bracing, it will help them protect their spine better. If they know how to brace, push their abs out, it will create stability around the spine. It will help them create more stability around the spine, therefore protecting their low back. Strongmen, same type of thing. You know, the heavier they get, depending upon the event, what they feel comfortable with, what they don't, could help them create intra-abdominal pressure, leading to handling more weight for more time, or protecting their low back, provided that they're using bracing their abs appropriately. Bodybuilders, same thing. If they can handle a little bit more weight, even if it's an additional 10, 15, 20 pounds, even if it's just that little amount of weight, having that much more weight that you're using could allow you to get more growth by utilizing more weight for more reps in whatever muscle group you're trying to target, your quads, your hamstrings, your back. So wearing a belt for a bodybuilder, and again, going back to that protection issue of bracing your abs appropriately, wearing a belt for a bodybuilder could give them an advantage. Weightlifters are a bit different because weightlifters have to keep the bar close to their body as they do that pull, as they pull their clean, as they pull their snatch. They want that bar as close to their body as possible. So they don't want to risk hitting the belt. Weightlifters that do wear a belt, and I've seen both, some weightlifters wear a belt, some lifters do not, generally wear a smaller, thinner belt, and some will even turn the belt around backwards so that buckle doesn't get in the way of their bar path. But weightlifters, again, just like all the other categories of competitive lifters, could benefit from wearing a belt. CrossFit falls right in for all the same reasons that I've just been talking about. Okay, the third group. So the first group was the athletes, second group competitive lifters. The third group would be your average gym goer, someone that just wants to stay in shape, isn't really trying to push their limits in the gym. Sometimes they may go a little bit harder, but their sole focus is just being in shape. Do they need to wear a belt? Depending upon how much weight they're lifting, how hard they're actually training, they might want to wear a belt. And another factor, does it help them feel more stable and more secure while they're lifting? If it does, maybe they want to wear a belt. But there's really no absolute necessity for someone that's just going to the gym to stay in shape to wear a belt. Even when they're squatting, even when they're deadlifting, it is not a necessity. Does it make them feel more comfortable? If it does, go ahead and wear a belt. That is absolutely fine. Okay, so now let's give a few tips on, actually, let's go first to different types of belts. So this is my first belt that I ever owned. My parents gave this to me for Christmas, probably like 1996, I'm guessing 95 or 96. If you notice, this is not a good belt, and I'm not criticizing my parents at all, because I didn't know any better at the time either. But if you notice on this belt, the front is very small, okay? The back, however, is thicker. So the back, I believe that is around 4 inches thick, and the front is around probably about half that, 2 inches, okay? Not the thickness of the belt here, but the width of the belt, or the height of the belt. That's actually backwards, okay? If you read, Mel Siff talked about this when he wrote the book Super Training, Facts and Fallacies of Fitness. He has a small section in there talking about belts, okay? Now, if you're wearing a belt like this, your back, now pretend my back is on the outside of the belt here. My spine will flex this way, okay? So if my spine flexes this way, there's nothing really stopping it. So if I have my abs facing the big side of the belt, when my abs flex, the belt will actually stop my abs, okay? If it's the thick part in the back, there's nothing, I just bend away from the belt. But if the thick part is in the front, let me step back a little bit, maybe you can see this, and I don't even know if this belt fits me anymore. Okay, it does not, so we're just gonna have to kind of hold it. If the thick part is in the back and my spine flexes, okay, there's nothing stopping my spine from flexing. If the thick part, and then I just fold around that thin part. However, if the thick part is in the front, okay, the thick part is in the front, when I start to flex, the thick part actually braces my abs better, okay, and actually holds me and would help prevent me from flexing my spine, okay? So I do not recommend that type of belt for anyone with the thin section and I know there are weightlifters who wear that type of belt because of the smaller size. But that thin section being in front is not helping you at all. You need something thick there in the front that is pressing against your abs that you can push out against and that is preventing you from folding forwards. Okay, so this is the type belt I would recommend. It is the same thickness from start to finish, except for the very tip that you're just tucking in the end or into the strap there. Everything else is the same thickness all the way around. That's the type of belt you need to have. Okay, you need to have something that's the same thickness. This is a single prong belt. Okay, if you're a competitive lifter, you do not want to have a double prong belt. Okay, get a little bit closer here. One prong, right in the middle. That's where you want it. If you have two prongs and you are tightening your belt down tight, getting that belt, it makes it a little bit harder to get on, okay, when you might be under a time restriction. But it could make it a lot harder to get off, because ultimately you're going to get the first one out and the second one is going to get stuck, and you're going to have one or two people and maybe even a rack to brace against trying to get that belt off. And when you just finish a maximal attempt, the last thing you want to be doing, and you can't breathe, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in a belt, not being able to get it off and still trying to recover your breath from that attempt. Okay. There are different types of belts. There are lever belts. Lever belts are great. They do require more adjustment, depending upon if you're gaining weight, losing weight, bloating up for a meet. You're going to have to take the time to adjust those belts. But they are good belts. I do actually really like lever belts. I've never owned one. I've used a few, and they are they're really good belts if you have them adjusted right. So moving on. Oh, and then there's other belts. There's neoprene belts. I think leather is the way to go. And then the other thing you would want to think about is the thickness of the belt. Let me take this off one more time. Now, this is a thicker belt. It is meant for competitive powerlifters or competitive lifters. This is a much thicker belt. I don't remember the millimeters on this. I'm wanting to say it's like 13 or 15 millimeters. I'm not sure. They do sell them much thinner. Obviously, a weightlifter would want a thinner belt. If you're just a regular fitness enthusiast, a thinner belt would probably be better than having a big bulky one like this. And the advantages to the thicker belt is it's going to be much stronger and harder for you to push your abs out against. The thinner belt might have a little bit more flex to it, which is okay, and it's generally not an issue, but the more weight you're handling, the thicker a belt that you would want to have. Okay, so wearing the belt. When you wear the belt, I'm going to step back here a little bit. When you wear the belt, you can put it on so it's snug, but I would go a little bit further than that most of the time. Sometimes I would go a lot further than that. But what you don't want, and I've seen so many people do this, is they put it on and it's loose. Okay, you should not be able to do this. You should not be able to stick your entire hand between your body and your belt. I've seen a lot of people do that. They think just because they have the belt on that it's doing something for them. It is not doing anything unless you tighten it up. Okay, so when you tighten it up, how tight do you want it? Most of the time, training-wise, this is actually where I wear it most of the time. It's good, it's firm. Now, I can't move it up and down. Definitely not a fashion statement. But if I were to take my fingers, I can actually fit my hand, or at least my fingers, I can kind of get those in there. I'm having to work a little bit to get them in there, but I can get them in there. Now, here's the key. To teach someone how to use the belt, put your hand or a couple fingers in the belt on the stomach side, and then have them take a deep breath through their mouth, okay, but not letting their shoulders do that. They want to breathe deep into their belly and push their abs and brace their abs, tighten their abs up, and squeeze their hand as tight as they can, or your hand as tight as they can with that belt. So when they do that, now I can pull my hand. I could actually get it out, but I'm pulling pretty hard and it's not coming out. If I'm not braced, my hand can go in and out, okay? And I'm kind of sucking in a little bit right there, at least to get my hand in. But even now, I'm not sucking in at all. I can pull my hand right out. If I brace my abs like they are now, I'm actually pulling pretty hard there. it would take a bit for me to get it out. So you really want to brace your abs, breathe deep into your belly, brace your abs, and push your abs out, okay? At this point, I'm not using the Valsalva maneuver. I will do that for myself when I'm lifting, but you should be able to brace your abs and create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure and create a lot of tension and tightness between your abs and the belt without actually having to use the Valsalva maneuver, okay? Now, this is where I wear it most of the time. When I get to my heaviest lifts, I'm going to take it one notch tighter. So essentially right now, I'm wearing it one notch loose. That's where I'm going to do most of my training at. That's where I'm really going to learn. If I'm someone new to learning a belt, that's where I'm really going to learn how to brace my abs and push my abs out against the belt. If I go one notch tighter, okay, now I have plenty of tightness. I cannot get my hand any further than that, my fingers any further than that into the belt. So they're just barely getting into the top layer of the belt, okay? Now the thing here you'd have to watch out for is you don't want to just rely on the belt. You still want to use that bracing technique, that breathing deep into the belly, pushing your abs out against the belt. Your abs and your obliques, push them out hard against the belt like you're trying to break the belt. That is going to create a lot of tension in your abs, and that's what's going to create the safety as far as protecting your low back, okay, and protecting your spine. It will also benefit you greatly in creating a lot of tension here, so this is not the weak place when you're deadlifting or when you're squatting. If this was weak, a lot of energy could be lost from your legs throughout all the way up to the bar. So we want to maintain that tension, we want to maintain that energy by getting the belt tight and by pushing our abs out and creating that, that bracing effect throughout our abs and a lot of tension there. So now when I'm completely braced, I can hardly move the belt at all, okay? The belt is actually not sliding on my abs or on my torso. It is actually pulling everything with it as I'm moving it. And you see I had very little movement there as compared to the one notch looser, which I'll do again. Okay, so now you have more movement there in that belt. Again, it's not sliding on me. It is still tight, but it does allow for more movement. At that is where I'm going to learn to brace, one notch loose. All right. I think that's going to be it for today. Again, not a complete belt-wearing Bible, but there is some good information there that you can take with you as far as whether you should be wearing a belt or not, and what belts you should be utilizing, and how to wear that belt versus just slapping it on and going and lifting. So that is it. If you have any questions, if you have any comments at all, please leave them down below. But until next time, always be in the pursuit of strength.